isn't coming out, but it's not just applying the LUT. It is, it's not just, and I started, by the way, it's not just applying the LUT. It is making sure it's going out the HDMI output. So
Yeah,
it'll
go to
look fine.
monitor.
I'm having, and the other thing is I'm going through the ATEM Mini, the capture. I was using the HDMI out into the capture card. I found out it was going 1080p, 59.99 frames a second, which the capture card wasn't accepting. Even if I went through my video assist, it wouldn't accept it. So now I'm going through the USB-C. So I should be having those sync issues that you guys have talked about so many times. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
For those who like log, when my Kona 4 gets here, I'm going to have to pipe some gamma disabled through vMix for you all to see what linear looks like, because it really messes with people who've only ever color graded log.
Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you are in YouTube and you see the link down below, you can join the conversation in Zoom. There's a link there to go to. If you're an attendee here and you're wondering how all these panelists showed up, well, we just got here early. We got here at 6:40. We open it, we do a mic check, and once we do that, we've locked the group. We start at 6 o'clock, and can't really promise anything. It's often very techy, but it's us just kind of having our tea and coffee and getting ready to go. It's sometimes the best. It's the least technical part of the conversation typically, but oftentimes the best. So 6 o'clock is when we open the doors, Pacific Standard Time. 7 to 8 is really driven by all of you. So if you ask your question, and vote those questions up, that's how this show works. There's not really any agenda for 7 to 8. It's just Q&A with people who have questions. So it's your job, by the way, as an attendee to ask questions. So think of things that you just are trying to figure out. Think about them all day, write them down, bring them in, and we'll discuss them, and we'll all learn from your questions. So it's a really it's a fun little model. 8 to 9, we have something specific. Today, we're going to talk about being a producer, basically the interface between the freelance group and the client group. So we're going to talk about what it takes to do that and kind of brainstorm on best practices and so on and so forth. So I'll be from 8 to 9 o'clock. And then tomorrow we have education. So we just talk about education, virtual education, building training, etc. Now Monday is kind of a wild card. Tuesday is audio, Wednesday is video, and Thursday is special guests. We had Graham Kerr yesterday. I would go back, and I'm going to go back and watch it. Evidently, it went very well. I was crushed that I just was in a turn that I couldn't get out of, and so it was I was crushed that I couldn't be there. So I'm gonna go back and watch it myself. Anyway, so that's how it gets going. If you want to share this with friends, you can. You're allowed, but don't share your own link. What you want to do is use the link that we put out here. So that's the link. That's the generalized link that you want to put. I just put it into Makana. If you're not in Makana, you're just watching this in Zoom. There's a link in the chat to go to Makana. Hey, Bill, do we have some questions?
We do have some questions. We could use more, so there's a little bit of encouragement for everybody.
Get to work.
Yeah. But John Preto starts out here. Mac users, multiple times a day, I use Shift plus Control plus Command 4 to capture a region of the screen. It seems like they've changed that sequence in Big Sur, and I don't like the new method as much. Anybody else experience this?
Go ahead, Sky.
I use it a lot for screen grabs, and because you can grab just the section that you want, but also there's a Command Shift 3, which I think is the full screen experience.
Full screen, yeah.
And Command Shift 5 is a new and unique thing that I haven't quite figured out. And Alex taught me that the QuickTime itself can capture either a screen or it does video capture as well. So
my little capturing thing, I tried to use QuickTime to capture the scrolling of a web page. That's undoable. Like, I'm just letting you know, like, it's not like I tried for about a half an hour, and I was like, oh, the heck with this. And so the problem was that the screen had a video on it that had to be captured. So you have to capture it in a movie because it had a video playing, looping. And so you want to capture that, and then you want to have a nice controlled scroll, and you want to stop at certain places and trying to do that. So what I did is I'm jumping away from your question a little bit, but I thought this is an interesting thing. I should probably go a little tutorial on. I did take a video of the whole thing, but I let it play through the entire loop at the top. Then I just scrolled up, stopping every once in a while, to grab it. Then I took it into motion, and I went to the keyframes that had a new section with a little overlap, and I just exported those frames out. So I exported the frames out that represented the whole page. Then I brought all those frames back into Motion, and I set each frame to difference so that it turns black when it's perfectly aligned. And so I just locked it. I just I just kept on moving the group up and locking them all in. So then I end up with this long representation of a web page. Then I just went and kind of set a keyframe and then moved it, and set a keyframe and moved it, and or just moved down and just set it up really fast. But then what you do is you go into the motion curves, the F curves, and you flatten each one of those, so it looks like a little hill like this. And so now it just kind of spins down and stops, like nice and slowly, and then goes down and stops, and it works really well, much better than I could with my mouse, because it was impossible. Like I kept on trying to, I tried to use different mice, I tried to do other things. I was like, oh, I'm just going to capture it, and I realized I'm spending more time trying to capture it than I would just animating this thing. But you can do that. The nice thing about that is if you have a lot of video on the page, you can get all of it as needed. Go ahead, Garrick, then Bill.
John, I'm not brave enough to put Big Sur on my machines yet, but shouldn't you have a keyboard preferences, and then go to shortcuts, and you can set your own sequences of keys that you can maybe change that back? I don't know what Big Sur has going on.
So they changed the keystrokes for screen capture.
So I have another machine sitting next to me over here, and when I tried that sequence that we're all used to, number 4, because you can just drag and select what you want, it doesn't work on Big Sur. I have to check the preferences, Garrick. That makes a lot of sense.
That's the most.
And so they have this new, if you do, and it's not even the same now. It's Shift Command 5, and it brings up a little menu that asks you what you want to do. And it's not as simplistic as the old model.
Oh, I just realized. Well, Shift Command 5, I think, is the capture in QuickTime. It's a movie capture, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say that's how I normally do screen grabs of video sources, is just launch QuickTime Player, and then under the file menu you get a new screen recording. When you enable that, it'll allow you to move around and resize the size of the screen you're doing a video capture on, and then you just hit return or enter, and it will start recording. It puts a little record button up in your top menu, and when you want to stop it, you just click on that, and that throws that screen capture onto your desktop as a movie.
I think that, so the interface for this is exactly like QuickTime's capture interface. When you hit Command Shift 5, you get, at least on Catalina, you get the exact same interface. What I'm surprised at is that they don't just add a selection to capture movie. Then I wouldn't need to open QuickTime, because opening QuickTime is such a pain in the neck.
I agree with you. Yeah.
If you go open QuickTime and then you close the open window and then you go to your app, it disappears. It's like, oh, he didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, that Command Shift 5 does exactly what I've been doing for decades in terms of that process. Right. I just think so. They must have added a shortcut key right for it. That's great.
Yeah, except that now they broke 4. There's a lot of people that are going to be like, "What happened to my capture?" Sky, and then
Alex, the video doesn't seem to be going out to Makana. I don't know if that means anything.
Oh, it should be. Interesting.
Should be. I agree. I don't. Maybe it's me.
Oh, try it now.
Video or audio?
Yes.
I didn't hit set. I didn't hit set active. So
it's active. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, I apologize for the email going. Some people got one email and some people got another. I can tell you exactly what happens there. That's because the operator changed it while it was in the process of sending it out. So I realized I hadn't done it. So I was like, I wonder if I got it in time, and evidently I did not. That's why half of you got the last yesterday and half of you got the new one. Courtney?
Back at Screen Capture, I've used something for years and years, and it does exactly what you needed, Alex. It's from TechSmith, called Snagit. It's cross-platform. It works with both Windows and PC, and it has a mode where you go to a web page, and there's a mode it clicks onto, and it'll scroll and capture and scroll and capture and scroll and capture and scroll and capture and assemble it into a single bitmap file and output it for you.
Dag nabbit.
Wonderful. And they also have a product called Camtasia that does video capture, which is supposedly one of the best video capture, screen scrape video captures out there. It's about $50.
Yeah,
That was the
That's
sound of,
great.
I could have used that all week to save
Yeah,
a
that's
ton of time.
17 hours I could have saved.
I used it on all these television commercials over the years. It's been a lifesaver for having to build custom web pages that,
Now, will
we don't-
Camtasia do that? The only thing I needed was I had video on the website, so I had to capture video, and I have to.
you can Camtasia will capture the video separately, and then you capture the web page, and it'll have just a cutout where the video goes, and then you'll have to lay a moving video player into that if you're going to animate it. I'm not sure how you do it in Keynote, but
No, that makes sense. That would have saved me a lot of time. Anyway, so that's a good one. Next question.
Next question comes from Eric Hull of Mount Vernon, Washington, and he asked, playing with an ATEM Mini for the first time, why can't I get sound to my computer? I see the sound on the ATEM, though not in loopback or system audio input devices. The device is there, but no sound.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I've been chatting with Eric in Mukana throughout this, and we're kind of stumped at the moment. He sees meters in the software. He sees meters on the multi-view, and he's selecting things right in QuickTime and does not get sound. So I'm trying to see if he can get multi-view sound on his multi-view monitor if he has speakers or headphone output there to check that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we got stumped there. I have to play with it a little bit because it's definitely showing
he's
up for
checked
me.
security preferences for microphone, all that stuff. So I think the test is to determine whether it's an ATEM problem, and that's check the multi-view to see if it has sound output.
Yeah, I would try. Yeah,
if it has that, then it's a Mac problem.
Yeah. If you get HDMI out to a monitor and it's getting audio, then I mean it still could be in the USB as an issue. Yeah, I don't. Eric, hopefully, let's keep talking about it. Let us know tomorrow whether you figured it out, and I'll take a look at see if I can.
Maybe I can run up and make a house call.
Oh yeah, go over Sky, fix that. Next question.
And Roger Miles from Lake Zurich, Illinois. And this is a general apology to everyone whose questions I missed yesterday. We had a lot of questions at the end. They were just flooding in, and I didn't get to everybody, and I apologize, everybody. Repeating from yesterday, does anyone have experience with the new $50 Apple Beats Flex headphones?
We were supposed to get a report today. I don't want to call anybody out, but someone was supposed to come here today and tell us how it went. I don't know if they're listening, but
yeah, they were waiting for a package, weren't they?
Yeah. And then they didn't show up. Let's see how it is.
Absolutely.
I don't think any of us else have played with them yet. So they do look promising, but I don't think I'm always I don't like the wire ones, any wires. So I think that it wouldn't be really the right one for me because I'd just be afraid I get it caught in things. Because I put these mics on all the time, like all this stuff I put on all the time, so the headset would be problematic. And anyway, but yeah, looks promising. Next question.
Sky from Seattle, and the panel says, Jeff Francis, I'm researching a PTZ for a church. In the past, you've suggested either PTZOPICS or MYLUMENS. My question is, which models and what kit should I be looking for? It's a 60-foot throw distance and goes into an ATEM Mini switcher.
We put in my church the PTZOPICS 30X SDI. So we went SDI because of the run from where the camera was placed on the front wall, the balcony up to the booth. And it's a little deeper. I think we're about 80 feet. So we decided to go with the 30X zoom.
You're at First Press Columbia?
Lexington Press in Lexington.
Okay. Because I did the YouTube and I could actually see they had pictures of the back of the chancel and the front of the chancel. And then of course the output. So I thought that's what that camera does. And this is what it looks like. So 30X SDI. Got it. Thank you. Oh, wait, what other kit do I need? I mean, what other cabling, the joystick, what else?
We put in a simple IR booster, so they're using the handheld infrared remote and just pointing at an IR receiver that is wired to an IR transmitter that is on the camera itself, so that we're not trying to do...
Does the camera take typical Visca?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
so
there's a
Visca control.
There's a web control as well.
Oh wow.
but it's PC.
Right.
Likes
Yeah,
PC
why-
better. So
Yep. John Preto and then Guy.
Sky, I have one for sale. Hit me up on Discord.
Copy that, sir.
Good car.
Yeah, Sky, it depends on what budget you're looking at, but there's, the PTZOPICS, there's, like I said, the lumens, and then all the way up to this one right here is a bird dog, which looks pretty similar to that one. And this is with the joystick. And it's coming in over NDI. The cool thing is if you're using vMix at your church, if I recall,
Correct.
because you can set up presets in vMix and you can just tap on them and have the camera, like right now I'll do a call to
Simplifying
3,
would be good for volunteers. Yes.
call to 4, call. Yeah, otherwise it's use the software, go NDI and then use the software to control the camera. You can just use NDI monitor and turn on PTZ control and go that
Sure.
route
Well,
too.
this is just a rabbit trail that I have yet to go down, so I'm trying to ask good questions.
Stuart.
Am I the only one loving the reflections of the ring light in Guy's eyes when he goes in for that zoom?
Hey, I think Rob Katz is the one that said he was going to give us a
I
report on the
noticed that.
headphones. And he raised his hand. Stuart, if you can let him in, I can't let him in. I don't have the. Here we go. We'll bring him in. We'll make an exception.
Okay, so just because I haven't done it, where are we letting people in from?
Oh, it was in the attendees, but then he maybe put his hand down. Hold on. Let's see here.
Hang
He had
on,
his
I'm
hand
just
up.
going to go back to gallery view so I can see it. And
Or maybe he
everybody-
left.
I believe it would be in the participants, wouldn't it?
He was there a second ago.
Participants.
His hand was up,
100
and then he disappeared. Maybe he decided to leave. He was listening to us, and then we took too long to get to him. Anyway, all right. Next question.
So Kev Brewer asks from Nottingham, UK, and the panel, another emergency question. Oh, this was the thing we were talking about earlier. Who as a guest would you most like to see here in the second hour who is still among us? In other words, not deceased as a guest.
Not fantasies.
And someone should take notes so we can have this
I am.
discussion. And also, if in the Makana, definitely put a list in the list stuff into the chat so that of people that you'd like to see us bring in. Go ahead, John Preto.
Scott Wilkinson, Alex, you said you were going to reach out.
I sent him an email. He didn't respond, so I'll follow up with him again. So yeah, but Scott, it'd be fun to have Scott come in. Absolutely, Stuart.
I will unmute myself first. I've put in Discord before Destin from Smarter Every Day, Tim Dodds from Everyday Astronaut, but I'd actually like to add one, which would be Garrett Mitchell, who's better known as Cletus McFarland, because he's figured out how to run events during COVID and create a following and create a way of encouraging others. And it'd be nice to see how he's built that YouTube business and streaming. Just the stuff behind, not actually his Cletus character.
Right.
What's his name?
Stuart.
And I'm unmuting myself. Cletus McFarland is the YouTube channel. He was the one of the behind-the-scenes guys for 1320 video, which is about drag racing, because 1320 feet is a drag race. But his actual name is Garrett Mitchell.
Very good, Kev, and then Paul.
Yeah, I was thinking we should tap up Peter Jackson.
Yeah, it would be
Down
great to
in
get
all.
Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
There
I
was
think he'd
there
do
was
it.
I had a funny conversation with Peter Jackson. When was it? It was 1996, I think. 1996, 1997. And we were the only previs department in the world, really, back then at Lucasfilm.
That
And
was
we got
you.
this call from Peter Jackson for advice on software to, he said, "Oh, I'm working on this film down in New Zealand."
small
And
movie.
he's trying to figure out how to do it. And George said he should talk to us. And so we were talking about our software and how we, what we did. But it was like, but we didn't know who he was. Like back then, we were just kind of like, he was just,
Who?
he's done a couple little movies. And
I think we should have him on because I think he might be willing to, because obviously this coming month, December, he's releasing Lord of the Rings and Hobbit 4K. So it'll be.
I doubt
on
it.
page.
I doubt this is the good, knowing how press
Oh.
works, having him come
Yeah.
to this is going to be a distraction from his
Well,
tour.
That's why we
But-
get him before he starts his press.
or after, we
Or
got
after,
time.
indeed.
Yeah.
No deadline.
But yeah, it's good. There's a couple of folks from ILM and stuff like that I'm working on, but I just want to get us into the right space before we do it. Mostly there's some people that I want to invite that we need to get to the full on streaming mode here before we bring them on, just because I can't afford to buy the number of people, buy seats in Zoom for the number of people that will show up. A couple of YouTubers that I know that I think would probably bust the system up pretty quickly. Victor, and then Paul, then Jeffrey.
As long as it's a wish list, Neil deGrasse Tyson would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's put them on the wish list. Paul, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'd like to see some more podcasters like Adam Curry and Todd Cochran. There's quite a few. There's so many guests that we could get on here.
Been on a show with Adam Curry. It could be a little rough. Like it would be like, I don't know if that would be, but I think getting more podcasters on makes a lot of sense.
It'd be controversial. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. I just don't think it would. Yeah, it would be hard to keep it in the middle road. Jeffrey.
I'll do the elephant in the room, George Lucas. But if you can't do George Lucas, then how about Greg Grunberg? He did a lot of Star Wars stuff and Star Trek stuff, and he's a director himself.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Courtney.
Well, I know he's been a panelist here, and maybe I came in too late to see. Maybe he did a second hour. Is Marty Brennis?
We should do him. We should do it again.
Because he's been
Marty. He's got a lot of stories.
Yeah, and and he's been here before, so possibly attainable.
His office is about. I have to walk the hall, and then I go up the stairs and then down the hall, and that's where Marty. When Marty jumps in, that's where he's not very far away from me. I was just texting him this morning about something. So yeah, I'll ask
Alex.
I'm sure. Yeah, that one's a pretty straightforward one. Go ahead, Sky, and then Garrick.
I just wanted to say thank you to Guy and Jeffrey and the whole team yesterday, because we were able to do roll-ins and then the screen scrapes. Then somebody pinned those screen scrapes from the end user. I've been getting a lot of affirmation to the show because it was interactive, but it was also alive, and the feedback was the roll-ins and the screen scrapes particularly. So thank you, Guy and Jeffrey and whomever else set that up.
Yeah, Garrick.
I would say I'd like to see some more live video directors. Someone like a Glenn Weiss, or even Hamish Hamilton. Hamish Hamilton. It's hard to say his name, but Super Bowl director, YouTube director, U2 concerts and stuff like that. So someone like that, live video directing.
It'd be fun to have a second hour, even a couple hours of talking to a round table. I have this idea of having some single ones, but then other ones of like, hey, we're going to have a round table with a couple people that really do a lot of this. Like, because we had Nate on. Nate was one of our first second hours ever. And Nate does a ton of cutting. And then there's Marcia, and she used to tour with Metallica and Paul McCartney. And I only know her because Metallica was doing something for Salesforce at Dreamforce, and I was streaming. And I was just managing the stream, but she comes on and she's on my comms, and it was the most amazing thing, because she goes, okay, camera 5, I'm gonna have you do this. Camera 6, I'm gonna have you do that. Like, it's really calm. She's like, camera 4, you're gonna be managing this. Camera 6, and she goes, okay, are we ready? And then the thing goes, and she's just screaming into that thing for 2 hours. It was just like this, just like, camera 4, get over there, go, camera 4, and she's just sitting there. I mean, literally, the Grass Valley switcher was like an instrument for her. Like, she's just sitting there just playing and yelling and everything else. And I was like, I'd never seen a woman like TD like that before, and she's just amazing. And so then every time we do music stuff, I would at least call her and say, are you available, to cut my show? And we'd fly her out for those. And she's just, and really great. Like, once he gets out of there, she's really great. But
what was her name again? What was her name?
It's, Marcia, and for some reason her last name escapes me at the moment. But she's in the Kapustin. I've never had to say her last name, whereas Marcia, so I've never said it out loud before, so it's in the email. So anyway, she's amazing. I think she lives in Oklahoma. John.
I know that Fenwick's been working on Stuart Chaffee. He'd be really fun too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Alex?
Ben Burt, to follow on from previous sound. Ben Burt.
I've asked Ben. Yeah. He said he's not doing that right now.
And James Burke.
So I'm trying to get James Burke. As you know, I'm very obsessed with connections. So I think it's just a matter of me here's the worst part is that I used to have his email because we almost did something with him. And so I had a couple of long conversations with James Burke and but like in 2004 or 5, and he's mesmerizing, like just mesmerizing to talk to. Like he can talk. I think we had talk for 2 or 3 hours, and it just went by like that. I mean, just incredible. I would have to break it up and just say, we don't know when we're going to stop the hour. We'll just let him talk until he's tired of it. But I was wondering if he was still doing it, but he did something there's a Facebook post where he did something for Harvard a year or 2 ago. So he's still,
Oh, he's still around.
He's still around, but he's also still actively talking.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of
he did that thing for BBC Radio, a half-an-hour show.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and because I started thinking about it again because I posted after watching Connections like the whole way through for the second time with my kids, and they've just asked for the USB card. Like they just have on USB. They have all of Connections, and they just watch it a lot. And so I definitely want to get him. I just can't get his email. Like he's got a support group, thing that's opaque. So if anyone can get a hold of him, let me know. Maybe Alex, you can talk to someone at the Beeb.
Maybe. I know some people in radio, so maybe I'll see what I can find.
See what we can do. Yeah, I would literally give him as much time as he wanted. Like it would be the most amazing. For me, it'd be like it's like one of the big ones. Stuart.
Just noticing before we move to the next question that Eric Hall has posted an answer to his issue in the chat. Something about having to do the hardware switch on the ATEM cam channel, if that makes sense to a previous question.
Oh, okay. Guy?
That's funny too, because I was trying to zoom in on mine. I couldn't get enough zoom to show those little lights on or off for each of the audio channels, because you can see the meter's bouncing, but until you hit on. So
right.
Glad to see that Eric got that sorted. But the person who I think we should grab is Randy Ubelos, creator of Final Cut and Premiere. I think he would be a great guy. And maybe Michael Horton.
Yes.
Great.
Michael Horton. So both those guys is kind of a ping pong, and maybe Steve Bays, get the whole Final Cut Pro team back together. Maybe I don't know.
Could be your round table.
That would be get like a round table of 4 or 5 Final Cut guys. That'd be cool.
That'd be fun. And I think we can work on that one. Sky.
I live in Adobe land just down the street. I don't know, Guy, do we know anybody there that would be interesting that we'd want to? I mean, the old After Effects people, the Photoshop people. I'm not Photoshop, but
a lot of the team that I know has moved on from there.
Okay.
Scott Snibby he's one of the original creators. He would be amazing. I don't know how to get a hold of him though. I trained with him at Aldous. That's crazy.
That's
20 years ago.
20, longer than 20. Sorry, brother.
Well, there we go. We should have that conversation about once a week, just to think, like brainstorm things, and then again after within a couple of weeks I'll have more focused time. So things are going to pick up into the end of the year. So let's keep brainstorming. We've got a bunch of people thinking about it right now too. So we'll keep taking notes. But if you have ideas, definitely go to we have second hour ideas in Discord, and definitely put them in there, because when I'm trying to think about it, when I'm brainstorming, that's where I scan. I just go through and look at not only what people have posted, but what they have voted on. So that thumbs up, if I see something with like 8 or 9 thumbs up, I go, oh, I got to figure out how to do that. If I see 1, I go, oh, we'll get to it if I need to fill some time. So doing that, voting on those on ones you're interested, posting and voting on those is important.
So it's all the way to the bottom on Mukana. It's called second hour 2.
No. That's not. No. It's up higher. It's in the middle section. The second hour ideas.
Thank you.
Anyway, yep. Next question.
Ruben Marchena of Grand Rapids, Michigan has a question for Alex. On YouTube, how do you have the questions linked to the answers timeline? Is it done
Jeffrey.
automatically by software, or does somebody spend time on the computer?
Jeffrey spends time on the computer. Jeffrey, can you explain how that works?
Yeah, there's this thing called a keyboard.
No. But how does it actually work?
Okay, so no, I was being a little facetious there. I apologize. So here's how it works. Let me just pull everything over so you can see it on my main screen. So what I have is, I'm on a Windows PC, so I have the timer going. Once Alex sets this to start, then I go and I grab the chat. It's okay to show this screen, right, Alex?
I can't see what you're.
It's just the host screen with the questions.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just basically and I started doing the copy and paste straight up. I have Notepad Plus here, so when the word next question comes in, I just look at the time. So it'd be, in this case, it would be 30:40. Maybe go back a second or two, and then paste in the question. I try to keep the question as true as possible. Before, I was doing a lot of editing. But then I started realizing some people might be searching on their question almost word for word in the search. So I decided to start doing it as close as possible, correcting any grammar that I can find or anything like that. But other than that, that's pretty much it. It's just a lot of manual work, and it keeps me awake during this hour too. So
very good.
Not as in I'm gonna fall asleep, but
he's just like, oh my gosh, these guys are so.
It keeps me attentive because. You all of a sudden you get torn away by an email or something like that. Like, for instance, I just found out I'm going to have to leave in about 5 minutes here to set up for something else.
Right.
But then I keep physically forward on the show.
Oh, very good.
So on a baton passing, is there anybody that could follow up on, because that's an amazing asset to have? Maybe.
Well, the other cool thing about this is I can now go to Makana and I can see the timestamps, and I can use those timestamps to put the rest of the questions. But anybody can start and then send it to me with the time.
I'll look at the API. We may be able to inject it straight in. I'll look at that. There might be a way for us to use. Yeah, let me think about that. There might be a way for us to just push it. That'd be really interesting. Anyway, next question.
We're moving on to Eric Hall of Mount Vernon, Washington, who says, what's the coolest way to capture the HDMI out on the ATEM and have it appear as a window on your Mac to shuffle along with your Zoom windows?
QuickTime. So if you do QuickTime and say movie in and make your ATEM a source for make movie, you have a little window that has video just that you can put anywhere you want, and you can screen capture it and get a full frame. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I think he might be looking to grab the multi-view output, so the HDMI multi-view output, in which case the Ultra Studio recorder will get you Thunderbolt into the Mac.
Oh yeah, if you're doing that, absolutely. And we used to use it that way. One of our really light ways of running an ATEM has been to use the QuickTime window, an Ultra Studio into the QuickTime window, and then we put the QuickTime window like just right above the software switcher, so that we can control it. And that's like our little, we put the little multi-view into the QuickTime, into your laptop. And that was like our super light way of having a multi-view without an extra monitor or anything else. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I actually do that with to remote into our recital hall, where I have an ATEM Production Studio 4K, and I have the one HDMI out multi-view into a monitor and the SDI multi-view into a studio recorder on the Mac, so I can get the window of the multi-view remotely just by VPNing into that. It's a little slow frame-wise, but you can at least see what you're pointing at.
Yep, that's great. That's the mini recorder that John Preto was just showing there. Yeah, that's all you need. Next question.
Eric Hall, I'm sorry, not Eric Hall, Jonas Dautel in Reutlingen, Germany. Does someone know a way to have a companion start an OBS stream but doesn't end it when I press it again?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
You have to actually set. You have to actually set the in companion. There's a push on, push off option. So you basically just you have to set two commands in there, I think is where you're going with that.
There you go. Next question.
Paul Wallace from the panel in Austin, Texas says, what's the best way to mount webcams and devices that have a top of the monitor type mount on a tripod or a monopod? These cams don't come with standard tripod mounting screws. For example, Portal TV.
The Portal TV is big. So that'd be something that's large to mount. What we've done in the past for smaller ones is there's these little, they look like little vice grips that are made by Neewer, Neewer, and they hook onto their little arms. So they have little arms, and then they have this little clamp that is there, and you can tighten it onto things. And so we used to use those with the Precision HD, the Cisco ones, because we needed that. And so and I also used it on the old C910s that did not have a quarter 20 on the bottom. So we just clamp onto them. Just don't tighten too much because it'll crack them. Not that I've ever done that, but so you have to be very gentle about how you do it. At some point we moved to printing them. So you just figure out a shape that works really well for smaller cameras, and you print one out. And then if you can get a kind of a hot tap of a quarter 20, you can actually get something that'll melt into it, and you make the hole a little smaller, and then you melt it in, and then you'll have a hard quarter 20 that you can add to that little piece of printed thing that's on the thing, and then you can hook it up to anything you need. Courtney, and then Jeff.
Yeah, I've designed a lot of 3D printed adapters with the quarter 20 hot melt things. But
what is that? What is it? I didn't have to buy one. I just knew that we did it. What is the actual device that you use to hot tap that? Is it?
No, you use a soldering iron.
Oh, okay.
You stick it and you find a tip that fits inside if it's a quarter 20, and you just hold the soldering iron, set the temperature right. A temperature controlled soldering iron is really what you need. And then just until it heats up, hits the melt point of the plastic, and then just push it in and stop when you get to the
I thought we had some kind of tool that did it, but maybe not. Maybe it was just somebody that did it really well.
Some people have a special. They do make on certain types of soldering stations. They do have a special tool that's the right diameter for 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch that you can use, but that heat it up. But I just use my soldering station to do it. Anyway, what I was going to suggest is there's tons of spring-loaded phone holders out there that have quarter 20 sockets on the bottom and expandable to hold tablets, or there's some tablet size and there's some that are phone size, and you can press those into service as a holder for a variety of cameras, and they don't put too much pressure on the object, and those are all over the eBay internet.
Yeah, that's Amazon. Great. Jeff, that was your suggestion as well?
That was, yes.
Yeah. And then Stuart?
Just adding to what Courtney said there, if you're after different attachments for a soldering iron for doing such creative works, have a look for a wood burning kit instead of a soldering iron kit. It's a soldering iron with attachments for doing artistic work, carving into wood and burning the wood at the same time.
That's great. I think we slammed that one. Next question.
Paul Shadwell from Often on the Panel from Turbenthal says, answering the screen capture question, I guess he has a reply here. Shift Command 5 on a map opens the last selection you had, which can be changed in the options menu. Also, the capture menu includes not just screen grab options, but also the screen record options. It's actually activating the QuickTime capture. Note that's how it is in Catalina, and it hasn't changed in Big Sur, so that's good.
Oh, record. What I don't see is where it has where it lets me do a movie, I guess is the thing that I don't see here.
Is it not up on the menu when you get that
when I do Command Shift 5? When I do Command Shift 5, I just see a lot of options for stills, but I don't see a place where I can record a movie. I guess I can do 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but it doesn't let me, or no, that's until it happens, I guess, is the timer. So yeah, I don't see
the far right button that says record. I believe that's
mine says capture. That's why I'm confused. It doesn't say record. When I hit Command Shift 5, does yours say record?
Yes, it does. I'm on Catalina.
I'm on Catalina as well. Interesting. Okay.
10.15.7.
Yeah. Because that would save me a lot of time, because opening QuickTime to do that is a pain in the neck. Anyway, next, I use it a lot to capture. The only reason that I'm subscribed to YouTube TV, because we barely ever use it, is that I have huge libraries of lower thirds, and that's the second hour we should do, is just go through my library of lower thirds and super sources and everything else. It's kind of like when I need a little time to not do anything, I open up YouTube TV, and I've subscribed to all the channels that do live. I mean, as many channels, anytime I see a channel that's doing live, all you have to do is say, I just want to record the show all the time. So then I have all these shows, like 50 shows or 60 shows that are being recorded all the time. And you just go back and you scale through it. And what's nice about it is you can just kind of scan through the record and look for all the super sources and all the way they use graphics. And then I can just capture the video. And then I just keep them in there. So when I'm trying to think about, like, oh, what kind of super source could we do? I've got a whole bunch of examples of looking at how different broadcasters do it well or badly. So anyway, but I do it with QuickTime, and it's a real pain. So this would be much better. I just have to figure that out. All right, next question.
Next question comes with some James Babbitt of San Diego, wondering how to encourage a member of a Zoom meeting to use the office hours approach of having good audio and good video. How could a non-technical person achieve higher quality on Zoom with the fewest wires and knobs?
It's easy and good, and sometimes they don't match up one-to-one. Alex and then Jeff.
I would say, to get a good picture, this camera is a MacBook Pro from 2016, which is a notoriously bad camera. But if you put a good amount of light on me, that does make a big difference. So this main light here is just a desk lamp with a daylight bulb in it. I do have a ring light, but I think if I turn the ring light off, I think I.
Whoop, your internet's your lighting is good, but the internet not so much.
The light switch was hooked to the internet. That's not good.
There you go.
He switched himself off.
The one we just bought, just as a note, the one we just bought 25 of, I think, are these guys. So this is the Nan light, and we've kind of fallen in love with Nan lights. So, and the reason for it really is that they build these fairly lightweight. And they're really simple. There's two dials. There's one that's temperature, one that's brightness. So when I'm sending it to somebody, it's not hard to send them. This is the LumaPad 25, but we just bought. It's more reasonable than the 200Bs that we bought the last time when we bought 25 of those. But this LumaPad seems to be the right mix of like surface area as well as lightness. It also has batteries on the back, battery option. Those are much more expensive. I think the ones you're showing there are more expensive. Oh, the larger ones are. But this little one we've tested and we're pretty happy with. Well, we're happy enough to buy a bunch of them. So they have a really interesting. I think that they have a really interesting range of lights. They've done really well in that area where for us, we've got a little bit of everything that they make, and admittedly it was a good deal for them. Because I'm on air, because of Mac Break and stuff like that, they sent me a couple to test, and then we've just been buying them by the bushel, because we don't buy like one or two. We just I need to buy 25 more of these. So anyway, they're pretty good lights. Go ahead, Jeff.
So we asked for the fewest wires and knobs, and the very first wire should be this one right here, which is Ethernet. Get wired to Ethernet, as we saw with Alex. Don't know if that was a Wi-Fi problem, but it could be that. And then there's a lot of just practical free stuff, getting their computer screen up to, the computer camera up to eye level, digging around your house and finding those desk lamps and things that will give you good light from the front. All of that's going to be excellent stuff. And then they need to get good sound. So they've got to get a quiet environment, or they've got to get a microphone closer to their mouth.
And I stack up the way when I tell people what the order of importance is, it's always internet. Like, you just got to have wired internet, and you really need to make sure that you've got at least 5 megs, and really you're looking for 10 megs up, 8 to 10 megs up, just to make sure you have some headroom. But internet with wired Ethernet and internet, then your audio. And what we send out are either the Pulson or the Piles. I mean, that's what, for the smaller kits that we do, we just buy them and we send them usually a couple, just to make sure that they get that it makes it, but they're $10 each. I don't think that there's the bang for buck for those, either the Pulson or the Piles. The bang for your buck is it's the best part of a kit. is that you can just pay $10 or $15, and it's not as good as, you know, a DPA or a Countryman or whatever, but man, it just solves so many audio problems. And I just think it's so much better than having a, you know, for the average person, you give them a mic that they have to lean up into and they won't do it, you know, and you get into the square, you know, inverse square law really fast if you just have one out of screen. Everyone wants to put their mic out of screen. And as soon as it's out of screen, it's not nearly as effective as far as just it starts to sound roomy. And then to everyone else's point, a good light. My wife does a lot of meetings and she just has a huge window in front of her. You know, she's doing them during the day, and she looks great, you know, with that. So so she, you know, you can also use large light sources that come naturally if you have it. The biggest problem there is that it's variable. So but if you have evening ones or cloudy ones, it might be a little different. Go ahead, Guy, Courtney, and then Bill.
Yeah, to answer James's question, I would say to record them on your side to show them what they look and sound like, because when they're talking, they think they look and sound as good as you because the resolution on their side is high quality. They're seeing themselves before the compression hits. So if you record them and play them back and then show them Jeff Francis's video and say, here's 3 steps. There's also a nice TechCrunch article that walks through like basic webcam all the way up to ATEM Mini with a mirrorless camera, and you can see the evolution, you know, budget-wise, 200, 500, 1,000. And so I'll put the link in the chat, but it really just shows you the evolution so that people could say, okay, I want that look for that dollar amount. That's what I'm prepared to spend.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just don't realize they look or sound.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Hosmuk is a good example of, he's been changing the whole country of South Africa by just having a really good kit. The better your kit looks, the more their kit is going to look wanting. You know, so that's the, you know, that, so the more you can do with yours and clean it up, the more it stands out that they're not, you know, totally making that work. Courtney, and then Bill.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think this comes under wireless, although you can go wireless. One of the most important things, I think, is headphones, and because echo cancellation in Zoom is what I always hear on TV when they bring somebody in who doesn't know how to use, you know, and you hear the you hear all that noise, and that's the echo cancellation trying to, especially if there's a fairly long delay between, you know, packet loss between the sender and receiver. So the headphones will eliminate that, and they can turn on original sound. And then, of course,
even when echo cancellation's in a clean area with good audio and everything else, it's cutting off the end of everything you're saying because it's trying to. And so we definitely send out IFBs for everybody. I'm actually wearing the one that we normally send, which is the auto, but we have found that the new autos are not as good as the old ones, and so we're looking around.
And especially if they're on the mic that's in like an iPad or an iPhone or something like that, where the mic and the speaker are in the same device, you know, you're going to hear a lot of that garbage.
Yeah, Bill.
So in my rig, I'm using, I think they're $45 newer panel lights. Let's see if I can do the big wide thing. So they're these guys right here. So that's everything I'm using for key, and they come from Amazon. So $45, they're the T120 kits. I have 2 of those at angles, and that's enough for a key light for me. I do have backlights and other stuff like that, but for somebody who just wants to do an inexpensive kit, $90 and you would be fine for that. They're on also really those incredibly cheap, newer spring-loaded arms so that I can move them out of the way should I need to.
And if you're working with folks, you know, we tell people, like, our job is just to make you look good. It's better for us to go through this trouble than we had somebody recently who was on a show, and then when they saw how everybody else looked, and they just didn't want to put the effort into it, they literally called us back and said, okay, so how do I do this? You know, they never wanted to have another meeting like that again, because we got paid to send everybody good kits, and then they just ignored us. They didn't want to use the kit, and then when they actually, you know, when they saw everybody else who used the kit, it became very painful for them, and now they have it sorted. They look great now. Kev, and then Courtney.
Another final cost-cutting exercise with your laptops. If you want to improve your picture, make sure your lens on your laptop is also clean, because where it's positioned on lids, finger marks, murk, all builds up.
We will tell people to wipe their webcam on their laptop. That's one of the first things we tell them almost every single time. Everyone's a little misty. You know, like, it's amazing. You watch them, just not with their finger. they'll do it that way too. They'll go like this, and you're like, that doesn't help me. You know, like, I need you to, you know, grab a piece of cloth and put it on there. We've thought about literally sending the cloth out in the kit. One thing, by the way, that yeah. So it's just, the kits are an opportunity, by the way, from if you're sending kits out to people for branding and sending other things out with it. So also think about the opportunity that you're putting something in the mail for them. Go ahead, Courtney.
Now I realize my lighting is not up to the par of most of the people on the panel, but one thing I'll mention is the thing that is lighting my face on the left that looks like I'm standing next to the hearth is one of these. And this was recommended by Andy Anatko on Mac Break Weekly one time. And it plugs into a USB port, and it has a Cobb LEDs. Well, this camera doesn't focus, but it's six Cobb lights, and it's touch activated. So you touch to dim it or brighten it, and it'll plug into any 5-volt USB extension. And that's why I've got it pointing at a piece of paper sticking on my pen holder here, taped to something.
Funny.
And you can actually
Let's give you a nice soft fill.
Yeah. It's good for a nice soft fill, or if you turn it around, it becomes a nice hard light. Or garish, if you, especially around Halloween.
Yeah, you've gone Halloween.
That's great. That's great. All right, next question.
Next question comes to us from James Babbitt in San Diego. It's follow-up. Hi, Alex. Would you recommend an all-in-one solution for Zoom, such as the Portal Plus from Facebook?
Zoom already doing one of their own.
No. Den makes one for Zoom. They're partnered with Zoom, so Den makes one. I think there's definitely applications for if you're just trying to have something you can plug in and it just works. I think that there's definitely applications for those types of things for people who are non-technical. I think that if you want to, the problem for me is that I always want it to be a little better than what everybody else has. If I'm in meetings and so on and so forth. So mine's a little more custom. It's hard for you to evolve anything. So you will. If you're really picky about what you're doing, you're going to at some point want to add more, and then you'll wish you hadn't done that. But if you think you're just going to put it up there, and like if I gave something to my parents, I would just definitely give them something like that. Just have something they know where to walk up into a room and turn it on, and it just works. I'd probably end up video chatting with them more often. But my parents live in the middle of nowhere, so the internet is not super fast. I don't know how long it would sustain. Go ahead, Paul.
The Portal Plus is very restricted, but it's simple, easy to use. You can flip the screen vertical or you can have it horizontal. It only has one USB port in the back. Guy's got a Portal Plus. He's been doing a lot of stuff with it that may not even have been designed for.
What can you do with the USB port on the portal?
Pardon?
What can you do with the USB port on the portal?
You can feed it out to another monitor and see the picture on another monitor, or you can. What else, Guy? Help me out here, Guy.
So yeah, it's HDMI out. So with the interface, you can hit participants and you could pin somebody, and so you can do what you do with your Zoom rooms. So you can have it as a cheap Zoom room. I mean, really cheap because you're not paying the monthly on it, and it effectively is a Zoom room. The other thing that so it's HDMI video out, and then Ethernet is the other USB option, and in a future upgrade, we're hoping that that'll be USB audio as well. Currently, those little adapters, what they say in the manual is that they only do one or the other. So that's really limited. Yeah, so you either get Ethernet or HDMI. You don't get both, which is kind of sad. So hopefully that's not a limitation of the hardware. Hopefully it's just a future firmware that they can push out and it'll do more.
Next question.
Stuart Fairweather from the panel in Melbourne, Australia says, I believe I heard someone mention Zoom getting lower thirds. Has anyone heard
what about the Bluetooth? Can you comment on that?
We've moved on.
Moving on. Okay.
Has anybody heard if Zoom will support transparency levels so we can hide Zoom overlays for output streams, or shouldn't I be thinking about hiding it?
It'll be interesting. I think I bet you it'll be pretty simple. That of what you can put up there, because they're going to try to keep it simple and easy. It's probably something you'll be able to load in my guess is it'll be something you can, I haven't seen it and I haven't seen any tests of it, but my guess is it's something where you can load a little ping, in your user, maybe in the app, and it'll just overlay it over. I'm sure it'll be simple, but it'll be really useful. I mean, there's a lot of people that we've used, or that we've worked with that would love to have that just a little ID that sits below it. Chad, he might be here. He's listening. He built one for Hangouts. Chad, are you here? Yeah, Chad Lafarge had a thing called Hangout Toolkit, and he built that, and it was great. It had a lot of great tools in it. So it was, and we had a lot of clients that were using Hangouts that used it all the time because it let them just put a lower third under everybody, so you knew who they were. Stuart?
While I'm thinking of these things, is there any update on Zoom supporting NDI out or hardware-based outputs?
We haven't heard anything. I mean, we've heard rumors that NDI is going to be supported. I mean, our big thing is we just want deck links to be supported. For me, I just want a deck link out. It just can't see it. So you have to scrape. And I want, the big thing that I want is deck link out without anything, just a clean output. That'd be just amazing. That's all I gotta say. Like it would, it already, I mean, you'll see some stuff soon of stuff we worked on, and it's kind of amazing how much quality we've been able to squeeze out of, with a little color correction, how much quality we're able to squeeze out of Zoom on a record. It's and we're now starting to do that live. So, we're running it into a proc amp, and Zoom comes in a little bit low, but you can turn up the quality knobs quite a bit to get more color out of it. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just for anyone who's wondering, if you want to do screen scrapes, that didn't do what I expected it to do, but yeah.
Cool,
the
welcome
one
to video feedback.
But the one on the top right corner, which didn't work, is actually what I'm seeing for the second view. And because I've gone full screen on that screen, it actually looks okay, but it's still not as good as having a true output direct from Zoom.
Next question.
Next question. We're moving on to Justin Emanuel, Staten Island, New York. Says, anyone else's Final Cut Pro export file sizes grow since the last update? 50 minutes of video grew from 7 gigabytes to 16 gigs since the update using compressor's default 4K preset. Best solution to shrink export file sizes back down while preserving quality.
It just depends on the footage of what you're outputting. If in many cases, increasing the GOP size, so it's the keyframes is what they call it, will buy you a lot. The big secret to MacBreak video back in 2005, when we started putting up 1080p podcasts, was and I actually got to write part of a little chapter in the QuickTime Essentials manual, because everyone wanted, and I got invited to speak at WWDC to talk about it, because they were like, how do the files get so small? Because it was like 20 minutes long and it was like 200 megs. And the trick was that by keying it and not adding grain back in, we took a huge amount of variables out of the thing. So that still that was comped behind us, made it much smaller, because those pixels never changed at all. And then the second thing is that we increased the keyframe size, the GOP size, to 200 frames. So it just didn't, and you just couldn't do fades. You can't sneak up on a GOP. So so as long as you cut back and forth, you'd end up with really small files, for that. So those are the tricks to bringing it back down. I'm sure that what they're trying to do is bring the quality up. Just make sure that you're exporting, probably prepping for things like iPhones that can shoot vision. Courtney?
I don't use that much Final Cut Pro, but my guess would be that I wonder if HDR is playing a component in increasing the color depth, which would increase your amount of bytes and bits that you're.
It would only be if you selected wide gamut, but I'm not sure if it would. It shouldn't do it, but it could. It could be doing something.
Because the newer version may now be incorporating HDR by default or something.
Yeah,
it might be causing that.
Bill?
Yeah, the screen geometry and the size of what you're putting out is always going to have, I think, the largest single effect on how big your stream is coming out. So if you're trying to fight for a specific,
but he's talking about same size, just it's the same. It's changed the size.
I understand that. I'm just trying to give him a way to quickly get to his smaller size output if he has to. But you're right. There's nothing that's going to change it other than the going into the compressor settings and trying to do something like Alice is suggesting, less keyframes, a longer GOP structure, something that causes it to have to calculate less along the way and then keep those calculations through more time.
Yep. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Stuart Fairweather from the panel, who's interested in if anybody of the Mocus C100 owners have recorded any footage to the SD card, and if so, were you happy with the quality? He's thinking of buying one, but he's concerned.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I've had a card in the camera precisely one time, and that was to upgrade the firmware. So that's a no, but if you'd like me to record something and send you a link in Discord, remind me in Discord, send me a DM and we'll do that.
Excellent.
Yes, please, Jeffrey. I'm seriously thinking about getting a couple more Cosmica C-mount lenses for the kit, and I saw that there is actually an Ingenue C-mount zoom available at eBay for less than $1,000, and I thought, wow, that could be interesting to play with.
We're gonna switch to speed round now. We're running a little heavy. We're just gonna cut through these questions. Go ahead. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. Is there a topic in Discord for suggesting future guests? I like the idea of talking this up more on future shows.
Yeah, there's second. It's near the top, not near the bottom, but there's near the top. There's second hour ideas. That's the place to put them. There's a whole thread there. Next question.
Next question comes from Tim Turner. What software or tool is the panel using for setting the audio levels?
I have the tool. I assume it's the meters that you're looking for. These are WLM meters from Waves, and that's what we use to measure it. I think all of us have different tools to actually change it. I'm going through a mix pre, so I have a little knob, but you can also go into Zoom and do it there as well. Next question.
Stephen Bauer of Seattle says, I can finally answer a question for Alex. Screen capture and record in Catalina. Change modes after Shift Command 5. Click on the icons to the right of the options to select the mode. The icons with the little dot in the lower right corner of them are your record options. So thank you, Stephen.
Keep going. There it is. I didn't realize what it was. It was just in. I see. That's great. All right. Well done. All right, next question.
Thank you, Steve. Philip Tesoro is next from Brisbane. Producer says, what is the average number of projects? Oh, this is for the producer section. I'm sorry, I jumped down there. Let's do Michael Vospines. Logitech's capture software includes live switching between two of their cams, but it crashes a lot in Catalina. Anyone having the same issues?
I haven't found the capture tool to be useful. So I love their cameras. I don't like their software. I don't think anybody else uses it. I think all of us are. It was a good idea, just not well implemented. Next question.
That's it. We're ready for just the producer section.
Okay, let's jump into it. So shifting gears before we go into this is we're discussing what we're defining. That producers can be a lot of things. Sometimes when you're a producer, it means you didn't do anything. Sometimes it means that you executive producers, especially that's like you got to put your name on it. I remember when someone asked me, like, I really want to be an executive producer, and I was like, sure, you can be an executive producer. It just means your name. And they because I wanted to show that I worked on this, and I was like, I don't know if it's going to mean what you think it means. But anyway, but producer, the way we're defining it today, at least for this conversation, is how do you. There's a person in all these shows that has to they're kind of accountable for getting things to get out the door. They aren't often, sometimes they're producing and then doing some roles. That's not usually a good idea. We'll talk about that. But their job is really to talk to the client, if you have the client talking to all of your staff, it's overwhelming for both sides, to do that. You have to kind of have someone who's managing the budget and managing all those bits and pieces, so that they're the interface between the clients or whoever wants to get something done and the people who have to do it. That can be internal, that can be external, but we're going to talk a little bit about things that would be useful for them to know, or things that, and I think with all of these things, we're all learning. So it's just kind of a brainstorm of things that we think work, things that we know don't work, or things don't work, and we'll go from there. So so if you have questions about this as we start to discuss it, go ahead and throw them in and we'll do it. Go ahead, Bill. What's our first question here?
Our first question from Philip Tesoro of Brisbane, Australia is, what's the average number of projects that most producers are actively working on at one time?
Go ahead, Kev.
Well, when I was working in that role, and I had programs going through the year, I would always only have 3 on the go that I was focusing on. One in pre-production, one presently in production, and the third in post. But I wouldn't do anything above 3.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think it's often also very different depending on, are you doing corporate video type things? Are you doing movies? I mean, the role of producer changes a lot. Usually in my thinking, it's the interface between whoever's funding the whole thing and whoever's doing the whole thing. The producer sits in the middle of that and is making decisions. Now, often your client in the corporate world is the producer. Sometimes in the corporate structure, it will be the stakeholder of the project who is kind of acting as producer. They're talking to the budgeting people in the corporation, deciding how much you can spend and when, and getting you the money for doing things. On larger projects, I think it's much more formal than that. And you often have these, if you look at the roll credits in the movies, the very first things are often these companies, and they're really just funders. They bring in huge amounts of money that allow the project to get off the ground and fund these huge numbers for productions. But I think, producers, one of those kind of fuzzy things, they are a place that take responsibility for driving the actions. But a good producer, I think, knows that the creative team is one thing, the money team is the other thing, and they're there to smooth the differences between those two constituencies.
Go ahead, Kev.
Just further to Bill's comment, yeah, as you say, there are variations in the term producer, but I think to highlight what Alex was saying, there's the executives, and then there's what you call supervisor, and then line producers. And it's usually the line producers are the ones that are down on set, keeping the director and the cast happy, while at the same time keeping the client occupied too.
And as best you can. I mean, there's times that there's what's interesting about what I found producing is that there is a value in the producer having done a lot of the roles that are around them. It is usually not good for the show for the producer to do those roles in there. You want to minimize that because they end up in kind of a hole. They end up, working on stuff, and because really as a producer, most of the time what you're doing is you're trying to keep everybody not overwhelmed, but constantly fed with what they need so that they can keep moving forward. And I think that's probably the challenge that I have probably more than any other one, is because I know how to do a lot of this stuff. I tend to do it, like, oh, I can just do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. But then you get then you have a producer that's not paying attention to all the other bits and pieces that need to get paid attention to. So you have to, it's this is the thing that I struggle with probably more than anything else as a producer, is not getting my fingers in. That said, the fact that my fingers have been in so many shows, I can sit there with a client and model exactly, how to do it. And I can think it out. A lot of producers who are just producers that just manage stuff, they can't think of the solution. And so, because they've never done it, and so having that skill set in your head of this is how to actually produce that piece, or how it actually works, really makes a huge difference in being able to actually think of especially if you're innovating, think of new ways of doing it, because you understand how all those pieces click together. Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, just following on from that again as well, your crew are the people that will do the work for you, which is where we've come back in discussions before, where having the right cast, right crew will make your job as producer or the director's job just as easy if you do that properly.
Yeah. And I have a tendency, I really pick carefully, and it really takes all the stress out of it. Like when you have, like, I have a crew working on a project right now that is just top notch, and they just, I've got I only have a couple projects going through right now. But they just, it's mostly invisible to me, other than, in meetings and at the events and stuff like that. But it's not, we're doing, I don't know, 4 or 5 live shows a week, and they're just kind of, they just like like a pretty well-oiled machine, just kind of push the stuff out. And so it's, but it takes a long time to find those people as well, and the hard part is you want to lean on the same people because it worked the last time, but you have to have a couple new ones, because then you go, oh, this person's really good, I have to use them again. Or, oh, maybe that's not the right role for them, or you have to think through that as a producer. Your Rolodex is really important, and doing lots of shows means lots of people, and that kind of thing. Courtney, and then Bill.
Yeah, the term producer has been diluted to the point that it's almost meaningless in Hollywood these days. You'll see, count the people that have producer in their title at the beginning of a film, and usually it'll be about 15 or 16 people with producer, associate producer, co-associate producer, executive producer, and they hand that title out as a means of compensation to actors and others that have their hand on the till.
It's a vanity credit.
Yeah, and so it's hard to know who the real producer is just from credits. If you're looking for work, I'd say start with the UPM, because that's the unit production manager, and they're the people who usually hire and manage the crew in most bigger budget union television shows or theatrical films. Now, in corporate production, you'll just have a producer hiring the crew a lot of times. But in the larger structured productions, it's a UPM, and they report to the line producer that Kev was talking about. And those are the only two people that have any real control. The rest of the people, because of their status and their participation in the profits, may have the ability to veto somebody. They can fire people, but usually they're not involved in the hiring level of people. The multitude of producers listed at the beginning are just there so that they can get money somehow.
Go ahead, Bill.
And there's also a lot of functions that are critical to running, particularly as the sets and the shoots get bigger. For example, insurance indemnification and certificates. That's something you don't want the creative people messing with, but there needs to be producers in the office to say, oh, we're doing a car gag and it's in public and it's a special thing and it needs a whole new level of indemnification. Somebody has to deal with our insurance agents and make sure we're covered as things go wrong. You don't want practical people who are working the set messing with that stuff. That's why that goes up to the producer's level.
Good, Stuart.
Executive producer is the title that actors get after the third season when they want to negotiate more money, but the production doesn't have more money, and they guarantee them they'll give creative control, but they don't actually listen to them.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace of the panel from Austin. When you watch the screen roll credits for a movie or TV show, when it says producer, what % of the time is someone who just funds it versus someone who is an operational person?
I think we kind of talked about that. It's 90%. There's one or two that are actually producing the show, like that they're managing the budget and hiring the people and doing all the other things. Maybe 3. It depends on the kind of how they work, but then everybody else is just there for name. You couldn't have that. It gets into too many cooks in the, as well. You can't have too many producers trying to figure out how to do stuff. But you can oftentimes we kind of break it up because we're not doing film. So our version of it is very different too. We generally have producers, and then we have coordinators. And the coordinators for us are the folks that are the kind of mini producers, and they'll be the producers at some point. And that just is taking roles off. So if someone's managing post or live or whatever, you break it up into groups of people so that they're managing that section, and it's kind of not invisible to you, but it's managed by you on a day-to-day basis. As the shows get bigger, you just have to be very careful of not putting in if you forget, or if you don't hire enough coordinators, you end up in the situation where there's just too much data and you're missing data coming in because you can't focus on all of it at one time. You need a good human being to actually be looking at those things on a day-to-day basis. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I don't know that much about this new thing, but there's a new beast called a showrunner who typically goes with these episodic show. It's not new. It's been around a long time.
Long time.
I've never dealt with
the title. It changed.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering where they fit in this hierarchy. Are they under producers? Are they producers? What's the point of that title, and how does it fit in?
Yeah, I think we want to move on from defining producer and just talk about the actual doing of the producer on this one. But we'll bring a showrunner in and have them talk about what it takes to do that. I think that's a whole another one. But I think we've taken up enough time defining the thing. So let's go to the next question.
Okay. Sky has a simple question. Budgeting, please discuss.
Well, I mean, this gets into your interface with your client. I've gone back and forth. So out of the probably 2,500 shows that I've worked on, I've done a line item bid for about 3. I tend not to line item bid. That's very unusual. So I'm not saying that's the usual way to do it. The way I think of it oftentimes is what I try to do is get to a point with clients where I had a client that wanted a line item bid and I wouldn't give it to them. And they were like, well, why can't I have it? Everybody else gives it to you. And I said, when you walk into a restaurant, do you ask them how much they paid for the wheat today and how much are they paying for the electricity and what are they paying the cook? You don't ask that. You just want to know how much the spaghetti is. And I said, and today the spaghetti is $14,300. That's what the spaghetti costs. And I think of it as it's an item. Now you can get some extras and you can do some other things, but I try to package it into something that's more of a product, that we don't get into all the little details, because when you start getting into line items with people, it tears up a lot of time and doesn't really line back up again. Oftentimes, if you're doing something that everybody does all the time, this is just the way if you're in a machine of doing something, then that line item makes sense. But a lot of times, for instance, we don't want hourly. We do hourly when we don't know, but we want day rates, and oftentimes we want show rates, like I'm going to have you do this for the next 2 months or whatever. I'll pay you this much, and the more you can get into big numbers like that, and the less you get into, and when we've done line items, it's because the company absolutely has to do a line item or they can't get it through. And then we go crazy. Like we literally list every cable. Like we just go, if you really want to do this, here is the, like it's $3 a cable, and there'll be like hundreds of them, and it'll just pages and pages and pages of detail, and it's just like, okay, sure, cut through that. The hard part with line items in general is that people will pull things out, but they're interrelated to other things. You take this out and then I got to buy 3 other things, or I got to rent 3 other things, or if you pull this out, it won't work anymore. Or this is the backup to that. And so getting people out of thinking that way and just thinking about the end product is usually a better solution.
I had a client once tell us query what consumables were on a film shoot.
Right.
And I said, it's the videotape.
Yeah,
so what exactly. That for? I said, you don't get a program without £15 worth of videotape.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Phil and then
you could
Bill.
Spend a long time on that.
Yeah.
The other reason.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was it Phil or Bill? Sorry.
Either one. Go ahead.
Okay. So the other reason to stick to round numbers and to explain to the client is that you can turn it back to them. This project is not defined enough for me to describe every single part that's going to be needed for the end result. Can you tell me as a client how many times you're going to pick up the phone and call me? How many minutes are we going to sit and discuss things? We can't describe that. So I need the ability to move money from this column to this column to this column. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that number represents my best guess as to how much I'm going to be able to be flexible for you.
Right.
Otherwise, if we line item everything, I'm going to draw a line. Hey, I only scheduled 3 phone calls with you. This is the 4th phone call. Bye.
Right. Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, I did the same thing. In the course of my many years of doing corporate video, we started with line items because people wanted to know that sort of stuff. And we used the traditional Hollywood budgeting template, which was above the line. Those are kind of fixed production costs that hit one time. Insurance and things like that go up there. Then production costs, which is how many cameras, how many days times what rate or whatever. And then below the line, which is all the editing and post and things like that. That worked for me well for a number of years, kind of in the middle tier. But exactly to Alex's point, over the course of time, it became contentious and a mess, because people would go in and they would act like accountants and try to figure out these line items, and it just doesn't work very well. Yeah. So we moved from that. I had that form in FileMaker Pro, and it would do all of the automatic calculations of this date times that things. And before I tell you what I moved to, the one thing that was good for me for that is that became my Bible of seeing how much my actual costs were. So I kept doing those, even though I moved eventually to a simpler form that was just here's your production estimate, and it describes in a paragraph what this function is, and it gives you a number here, and that's it. And there may be 3 different types depending on the kind of project, but it bundled all that detail into a simple, easy to talk about thing. And then I always had that big, complicated spreadsheet to be able to say, I can drill down very quickly, and I know I'm not missing everything. And it was a good tool for me, but as Alex is saying, I try never to let the client dig into that.
Yeah, it's kind.
Well, I guess I realize you are doing live show presentations, and those are a consistent product that you're creating, I guess I realize I'm coming from post-production where you can change things, and that the managing it, oftentimes the expectation, because at that
But
point
it's still best guess. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get day rates, but I don't talk to the client about the hourly. I just say, this is how much it's going to cost. Like this is, like the editing is going to cost this much, and I'm guessing, and I have to live with it. Like I have to live with what I gave them, unless they
Yeah.
do something really crazy, I'm going to live with the number that I have. And sometimes I make money and sometimes I make less. Sometimes I lose money. I don't lose very often, but I definitely get to because then we start becoming more efficient, because we have to do that. But it is hard, and I think that, going back and forth a lot about budget hurts your program. Like, that's
yeah.
It's I will say, as a producer, we there's two ways of going as a producer. One is to tell people what the day rate is. Hey, we're hiring cameras at $600 or at $300 or whatever. I don't do that. I ask people what the rate is, and then I decide whether I can afford that or not. So if they say, sometimes I'll say it like, this is the budget I have. And oftentimes that's because I'm apologetically telling someone I'm paying them less than like, this is the number I can do for this project. But 90% of the time I'll say, what's your rate? Especially if I'm asking someone to do exactly what they do every day, they have a rate that they have in mind, and then I make a decision. Now, if it's really higher than I can do, I'll say, I can't quite get there. Is there a way for us to go down a little bit or whatever? But generally I try to pay people what they said. Now, sometimes I just will say, well, we can't do that, or I figure it out. But I try to have people feel like they're getting paid what they think that they should be getting paid. As a producer, I think that that's an easier, if you pay someone half of what they're used to, or maybe for a short little, like a favor that you're asking them for, but ongoingly, that's really they just don't do as good work. That's and your team doing great work is what matters as a producer. Go ahead, Sky.
I guess my question is scope creep, because the client's imagination is free. They think they should be able to have it because they've seen it, and then what it takes to make it is not in their experience. And so that's, I guess, working with civilians and corporate wannabes, just kills me.
You make it clear to your client who you are and what you do. You're the producer or director or whatever your position is with the client. And you simply make it clear that this is what I need of you. What's the deadline?
Right.
How much have you got?
I find that I can do that a lot pretty softly. I don't, I can guide the project, but that's the trick is the guide a project.
Not allowing them to take ahead.
Efficiency, and then just say ahead of time like that would probably cost us some more to do that, and if a client is hammering you over that, they're just, finish the project and then don't use them again. Like you just have to, the key is the trick is finding great clients and as a producer, find great clients and find great freelancers, or staff, and you'll have a good life. It's, but you have to be willing to fire both. You're not be hung up on that, on either the staff or the clients until you can, I don't mean fire them, I mean not hire them for the next project. You're as a producer, you're constantly cycling through people to figure out what's, going to work for that. You find the people that you like, and then you just keep on hiring them. And then you slowly get to a point where you get into a groove with a bunch of people, and there's nothing like it. Like a lot of people that I've worked with for 10 years, and we have a second nature of how to talk about things, and I know what they're going to handle it, and they know what I'm sensitive to. And it really works really well.
I lost that producer, and he and I used to finish each other's sentences. There was silence in the room when we get stuff done.
Yep.
That's a great thing.
Yeah. Courtney, and then Bill.
In the world of advertising and commercial production, it's a bit of a different kind of structure for budgeting, and the way it works there is usually the client, of course, has a product they want to sell, and they hire an advertising agency, and the agency is usually a long-term hire. They'll have that account for years. And the agency then generates the creative stuff and generates a storyboard, puts it out for bidding. Then the various commercial production companies budget based on those storyboards, and they submit a bid, and then the agency will choose a production company based on that bid and how much they basically have to bid in their advertising budget for that year. And so, and then the production company hires the people below that. So, and they usually, each production company usually has a stable of directors, and a lot of times they'll make their decision. The agency will make their decision if it's a director that they like, that they worked for before. That will influence who they go with, even if the budget is a little higher. And what the producer, the production company producer, has to do is build in protections into their budget for overages, because agencies and clients like to get on the set and say, wouldn't it be better if they did this instead of that? Right. And so that, the production company producer has to step in and say, that's an overage. Sure, we can do that. It's going to cost you this much more. So you have to build those contingencies into your budget to make sure that you're covered in case they, throw a curveball at you on the set.
Yep, absolutely.
Somebody referred to that person as the UVP, the unknown vice president.
There you go. Bill?
My favorite words in my production estimate that I used to do with the big paragraphs rather than the line items was up to. So I would specify this is up to 3 cameras for up to 3 days. And then you have something in the actual agreement. So if somebody says, 2 of my key people can't make it, can we add another day? You go, yeah, but look back at the production estimate. We're over that limit. And so that is a simple way to scope creep control.
Yep. Stephen?
Yeah, the important thing is change orders, and the answer is yes, we can do that. And I'll get that price to you tomorrow. And also there are things called customers that you never want to see again, and be able to walk away from them. It's like you never have time for them ever again in your life. You never tell them that.
But what I will say is you don't have to tell them that. All you have to do is be busy.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to tell someone that, and I'm busy enough that usually it means that I'm really actually busy. So but I've had clients that I just am not available, former clients that I was just not available for. But I don't tell them that, oh, I don't like working with you, or, oh, you're a pain in the neck, or, oh, whatever. There's no reason to pick that fight. It's just like, oh, I'm really sorry. I don't have, I'm booked through whatever. It might be booked with private time, your own mean time, but it is, I have on the other side of it. I think we talked about this on the last one is, with, you don't need to get into personal stuff with folks. You just have to be kind of careful. I think that everybody gets too loose, and you just have to be super careful, especially as a producer. Obviously, one wrong thing with a client could be the end of your relationship. It doesn't take very much to do that. You can also, there's a lot of things you can recover from by just doing good work. But you do have to be careful of how you speak. Client, you're trying to give your clients confidence that it's going to get done, and you have to, being really candid about how the sausage is made doesn't necessarily make them feel better. But you also want to be transparent enough with what's going on, and if there's some issue or some wrong, holding back on it is problematic. But the same thing with the, freelancers, or the staff that you're working with, telling them everything that's going on. Some of them want to know that, but they can't process it. They don't know the whole picture, and so they're going to make a whole bunch of decisions about whether we're going the right direction or the wrong direction based on a not a complete pile of information. So the producer kind of sits with all of that and has to kind of puzzle piece it together. Go ahead, Alex.
As regards things going wrong with live events, if you've got, say, 3 days of events, and as long as something doesn't happen in the first 5% or the last 5% of what happens, the memories are usually of how it kicked off and certainly how it ended. Yep. So there are times when things just go wrong, and you just have to, don't necessarily point them out, but be ready with an answer. But then at the end, it's quite likely they'll just remember the big feeling, the emotional feeling that it went well.
Yeah.
But as regards starting off, as a freelancer, for a while I was a videographer, and given the fact there wasn't much money in their budget, I kind of said, look, effectively, I am the person who's going to be filming and editing and doing the post and preparing all this footage. So I want you to partially be the producer, to do the things that you can do organizationally. And they don't mind as long as they know I'm going to tell them what I need. Because usually quite at the time when you work in corporates, they are people who are organizing things anyway. And you get to take on a little bit of that responsibility. And then what happens is the cool thing is And also when I do, initially I used to talk about day rates, and I'll say, look, see what I can do. This is for motion graphics and other stuff. I'll see what I can do in 1 or 2 days, and then you'll realize after that this day rate is going to be okay. And then they actually start thinking in terms of what it would cost them for me to do it, based on me telling them a good estimate of how many days it's actually going to be. So sometimes you can actually rope the client in to actually produce a little bit for you and to take some of the risk on, if you see what I mean, because they know their budgets and stuff like that. But that's on the smallest jobs. But obviously some people involved in office hours are on small jobs too.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's probably smaller jobs is probably more applicable to most of us than the larger producing roles at the moment. And I think that there's a lot of we talked a little bit about it. There's a lot of things that make things smoother, especially on smaller jobs. Some clarity on how much everyone's getting paid. It's good for a producer to do. Also, food. We talked about this. It came up that freelancers should never complain about food. You shouldn't ever on a set. Ever. Don't complain about it.
Be there.
You bring a freelancer. I bring enough food. I bring enough food to a shoot set that I'm self-contained, like power bars and things like that. But I mean, I could work all day without getting fed. As a producer, I think about it all the time. I think about catering all the time. Like you don't think that producers who don't pay attention to catering haven't done this for very long and don't have a very good crew. Like that's the, producers who've done this along understand that that's the, if you get people to volunteer for your independent film or your little weekend project, that you're not paying, feed them well. Like you can tell the guys that really know this, they'll bring a catering. They may not pay everybody, but they'll bring catering in and make sure that it's really, because that's how you get them back, and that's how you build that up. So, having, really paying attention to how, it doesn't have to be that you have to spend a lot of money, but it affects the energy of the entire crew. We worked in Japan. I worked in Japan for 6 weeks on a film, and near the end of it, I thought that it was just me. We're getting these bento boxes. It was a big crew. We were getting these bento boxes, and they weren't great at the beginning, but by the end, I was starting to get like almost a gag reflex eating them. Like it was just they were so bad. And I just couldn't eat them. And I started just bringing my own food and everything else. And I didn't want to be the American complaining, but the crew almost quit, and for a Japanese crew to almost quit is a thing. Like it's like, you really have to screw that up. Now, it turned out that the bento boxes that we were getting were $3 a piece. And the ones that were really good were like $6.50 a piece. Like you're talking about, a difference of hundreds of dollars on $1 million film or a multi-million-dollar film, hundreds of dollars a day. Now, that's someone who's trying to cut a corner because they're trying to fit everything in. That's what you have to do. But that was the wrong corner to cut, because then you have people working slower. They're frustrated. They're talking to each other, and your crew's energy is just such a key part of this whole puzzle. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Bill.
Just what you were saying there about independent, I can absolutely guarantee to everybody that what Alex just said is the absolute truth. We had a shoot that we had set up for a 48-hour film where we were blacked out inside the house and everybody lost a sense of time during the day, but people could walk through one curtain and there was a bain-marie set up with hot food all day, and we did not have one complaint from talent or crew that they were low blood sugar levels or anything, and everybody just kept going and going and going, and they were happy and they loved the shoot.
Yep. Bill?
Food is important.
Oh yeah,
it's crucial. Yeah, the line item in U.S. shoots is sometimes craft services. And I actually had a producer once say to me, that's the first place he went, how many people are on the set and what's your line for craft services? And I could tell it was, if you haven't thought of that, you're not really a pro in this business, period.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, food is important, because if you look on Craigslist for all, when you look for jobs on Craigslist in production, you'll see, compensation, credit on the film, and free meals.
Right.
That's your total compensation on a lot of those Craigslist.
And it really is one of those things that just make it good and try to figure it out. And we've done all kinds of creative ways of doing that. But you have to, but definitely think about how you're going to take care of the crew. And also know that you do want to think about the kind of food you're feeding them too. I don't, like on a big film, we'll feed them whatever we're feeding them. On a small shoot, we mostly think about what can people eat easily with their hands that isn't going to weight them down. Like a lot of Mexican and Indian, those are not great on sets because people slow down in the afternoon. You know, like it's just too much. And so I also don't put chocolate out. We got a whole second hour on crafty, but I don't put chocolate out until the late afternoon.
Well, I learned from Emeril Lagasse, that's where the word BAM came from. That became his signature because it happened at 1:30 in the after everybody came back from lunch, and it was a way to energize the crew. Bam!
Yeah. So anyway, but food is very important. I mean, I think that, you know, what people want the most is to feel like they're valued. You know, food is a big piece of telling people that they're valued, is that they're doing it. Another thing is to, you know, again, try to not, it's inevitable. Production is inevitable that people are going to work long hours here and there. Like, that's just what happens. But trying to minimize that as a producer is, you know, in the early days, I did not. And I just went through a lot of crew, you know, like because I'm used to working, you know, I didn't work less than 60 hours a week since I was 12, you know, like I was just constantly working on things and on a farm and doing other things. And so I just had a very thick skin. You know, I didn't even know what to do with myself when I got to ILM, and the union didn't let me work more than 45 hours a week. I didn't know what to do. But I very quickly learned that not everybody is that way. And I burned a lot of people out, you know, working on projects, and just everyone's working 60, 70 hours a week all the time, and they just don't operate very well, you know. And so you just want to think about trying to build that environment where the client feels like things are under control, the crew feels like they're taken care of and things are under control, you know, and you won't always do it. Like, you just have to know that, you know, you're going to get surprised, but you want to keep being brutal with yourself in making it better for the next one. You know, every project you should be iterating. I've never done the same project the same way again. You know, it's always, you know, 10, 15%, sometimes 50% different than the last one. Kev? And
final tip on the foodie thing, regardless of the budget for your catering, don't let the client offer to do it for you. Because I've had that happen, and then you find out the food arrives and it's not what you're expecting.
There's some clients, I will tell you, there are some clients that we definitely let them do it, because
so you know your client.
Yeah, you have to kind of there's
to suss that out.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. If a client spent a lot of time going back and forth about the line items and the budget and everything else, don't let them do it. If they went okay, and they, you know, and you might want to think about it, because we've had some clients that brought in stuff that I would never pay for. Like, I would just, you know, and the best ones are when you're working at a hotel or something, and they just say you can take some of the extra, you know, that, you know, for because then it's the good stuff.
All the little soaps you can have.
Oh yeah, no, but at the hotel, like, they'll have the, you know, if you can on a nice hotel. I work in a lot. I mean, most of the events I work in are pretty nice hotels. You getting into the catering line, you know, at the end after everyone's gone or whatever isn't a bad thing. You know, for it's usually better than the crew catering that comes in, especially at Moscone. Oh, I just won't. $125 a person per day, you know, to feed them, and you have to do it technically. So it's they got you, and it's just horrible food. Bill?
Yeah, I was going to say the subtle piece of why this is important. We used to always, one of the first things, to set up a card table, and we would put craft services, particularly snacks, not for the meals, over there. And on most of the shoots that I did with high-level corporate executives, CEOs, and presidents, I would want, where is Bob? We need him for the next shot. And that's where he'd be. At the craft services table, talking with 3 or 4 of his upper-level people. And it's just amazing how a table full of food becomes a central focus, even on a big, complicated set.
And we'll do an hour on crafty at some point. But the thing to take that one more step, and then we'll go back to questions, is with both as a producer, and as when you're dealing with your clients, and when you're dealing with your staff, it's paying attention to them and figuring out what they like, you know, and how they work. And it's not how you want them to work, it's how they work, you know, as best you can. And when you first work with them, it might be, you know, oh, how do you give them guidance, and but there's people will respond to different things. And as a producer, if you're not willing to do that, if you don't think that that's really part of your role, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Like, you have to, and I didn't for a long time. I mean, I was notorious. There was another Chris Marler who runs our school in Rwanda, but he was a partner, you know, in Pixelgore. He's where everyone went to, because if he came to me, I would just go, it sounds like a personal problem, you know, like I just was like totally hard, you know, and you just, you know, you just solve it. You know, I'm not here to complain to, and, you know, I've learned a lot that that's not the way to do this, you know, so, you know, but you really, you want to, you do have to be exacting though. You do have to keep people moving. That is a big piece of what you're doing, but you have to figure out how to build what we often call the velvet hammer, where it doesn't leave any marks, but you do have to kind of hammer things in because things have to get done. Yep. Next question.
Paul Wallace asks, will office hours have producers?
At some point. I mean, this all started with a kind of a funny idea, like let's try this. If we started generating, we're starting to bring people in to kind of look at the different days, and we're looking at that stuff. But at some point, I think that we'll have more infrastructure, but it would have to be larger before we would do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Trying
Stuart.
to figure out how to do a virtual craft service table now.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Stuart.
Well,
I will say
Courtney,
breakfast
my
was
craft
pretty awesome.
surface is right here.
Yeah, there you go.
But I will request that Mickey and I get technical producer credits.
There you
and
go.
I now understand why Mickey was saying about the mute button being fabulous, and how I can already see from different people in the panel who makes sure they hit to mute their microphone when they finish making a comment. And it's like just making sure there's nothing going on in the
Right.
background.
No, absolutely. All right, let's go to the next question.
Paul Wallace is back with, what about the podcast revenue gathering model where every audience member who sends in funds is a producer?
I'm going to kind of move on from that because I just don't want to talk about like that kind of role. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, or what I'm hoping to do here, is just talk about operationally how to be a producer as opposed to how to generate, how to get into profit sharing. But it is a model of making everybody some kind of producer there. Next question.
Larry Tang from Concord says, how do you deal with meal breaks and penalties for union and non-union gigs, especially 12-hour working lunch because the clients want to rehearse during lunch and at the end of the day for the next day?
So the couple things. One is we try to treat everyone pretty much the same, whether I'm doing a union or non-union. I may not hit it right on. If it's non-union, I'm not quite as particular about it, but so basic union rules are 3 to 5 hours. You have to do a break every 3 to 5 hours, and a meal break every 3 to 5 hours.
6 hours.
Sorry? Oh, you muted yourself.
6 hours, every 6 hours.
In
the current IA contract, at least.
At Local 16, I don't know. It was 3 to 5.
I don't know about Local 16.
Yeah. So Local 16 is 3 to 5, and so I've got 3 to 5 hours. And so you think of, as a producer, you think about this stuff all the time. If I'm going to have someone show up at 7, so when I have the team show up is when I'm looking at the meal break. Like you have to. There's math. There's this calculus that you're doing constantly of what teams need to be available and what teams don't need to be available, and it's not something you just kind of do. Like it is full on, it depends on how big the crew is, but when you start getting to, I think I talked about it last week. I missed a meal break by 3 minutes, and it cost me, I think $26,000. I believe it was like 25 to 27, 26, I think, but it was in that range, because to what Larry's talking about, it wasn't that 3 minutes that cost me that. It's the fact that I could never get back to, by missing that because we had another rehearsal, I had no way to break anybody until the end of the day, right? Or a show. There's no way to break someone till the end of the day. So I'm paying meal penalties on an entire crew of like 45 people or something, paying meal penalties, and then eventually overtime on top of the meal penalties. And all those things are designed to have the crew, it forces producers to be organized. Otherwise you just run your crews into the ground. So those penalties are there to make sure that you either don't run your crew to the ground or they make a lot of money. They can live with it for a project or two if they're going to get paid really well to do that. So I understand why it's there. And in Germany, by the way, there's no I think it's 12 hours is the max. So we were getting ready for a show and they said, well, there's overtime after 10 hours, I think. And I was like, oh, that's good. And what happens when we go over 12 hours? And they said, oh, you can't go over 12 hours. It's illegal. I was like illegal, and they're like, yeah, you can't work more than 12 hours in Germany. And so we had to be really careful. Someone pulled a truck up and they had driven all the way there and they hit the 12 hours when they parked the truck, couldn't move it for 8 hours. And then, our load in was like completely shattered because the truck driver had to go to take a 6 hour break or 8 hour break before he was allowed to touch the truck again. Even if it would taken half an hour, it didn't matter. It was against the law. Courtney.
Yeah, there are different contracts, and locals, they have now in unions the thing called the Area Standards Agreement. So different locals around at least the U.S. Can negotiate different rates. And then there's the international, if we're talking about IETSC, there's the international agreement, which is the Red Book, and that's the basic agreement with all the studios. I'll sign on to that agreement. But so rates can vary, but usually working conditions are pretty much outlined by the basic. And it's 6-hour meal breaks, and you do have to be careful. Meal penalties start after 6 hours, and there's things like pre-calls, where you'll give some people a call, some 7 o'clock call for most of the crew, but some people will have a half hour or 30 minutes before that, and you got to worry about, okay, well, we got to feed those people after 6 hours, and the rest of the crew isn't going to break till this, so you got to provide for a meal earlier for some people.
And the one thing I'd recommend,
huge consideration of tracking all those people that had pre-calls and all those people that had late calls and so on.
Once you get above about, I would say about 15 people on union, you have someone that's just paying attention to that. Like just, that you hire someone that is only going to pay attention to that, and you just talk to them. It's a coordinator, and you just talk to them, and they figure it out, and they work with the with their union.
Shop steward,
the steward, the steward to make sure, because the
steward
there.
Shop stewards anymore, unfortunately.
Sorry.
They don't have shop stewards anymore.
Well, there's a steward. We had stewards for every team that we end up with, at least. And so anyway, but in general, though, what I would say is that it really made me a much better producer to do union jobs. At first, I avoided them like the plague, just because it was just, oh man, and then the first couple you resist it, and then it's really expensive, and it's really unhappy, and everyone's mad and everything else. When you just get used to like this is how it works, then it's fine, and it's just and it's you just get you settle into it.
Producers have found ways to abuse those rules, unfortunately, over the years. That there's a thing called grace, which is dreaded, where if you go into meal penalty, a 6-hour call, and they don't call lunch, let's say, they say, okay, we're going into grace, which means they get a half-hour grace period. If you're in the middle of a shot, you can continue that shot, but you can't do a new setup during grace. And you can only call grace a certain number of days in a row, and so there's a lot of dodges around the rules, so that allow producers to avoid paying the meal penalties, but they can get pretty stiff on a 100-200 person crew.
And I think that's what really makes it hard anyway. So the main thing though is looking at letting your crew break, and letting them think and breathe and do all those other things. One of the things that's really important though is, as a producer, whether it's you or a coordinator or whatever, depending on the size of your team, is providing certainty. The producers that we work with, that I work with that I think are great, is they provide lots of certainty. You're going to show up, you get a little paper, you're going to show up, this is where you're going to park, this is what you're going to do, this is how you get there, this is how and they outline what they're looking for in a relatively straight mannered way. You just feel like they're buttoned up, and you just as a crew member, you feel more like this is going to work. Courtney?
There's one other thing I wanted to mention is there's a thing called French hours, which they can negotiate at the head of production. And what that is there are no meal breaks. And how that works is it's a 12-hour day, but hot food is available on the set the entire 12 hours. And whenever you get a break in your department, you're not doing something during a lighting setup or something, you can go grab food and eat it on your own time. But when they call roll, you got to be ready to go. And most union members really don't like French hours. Some people do. Some producers like it because it doesn't slow down the production day at all, because you're not having to stop, and because it takes an hour and a half to do lunch really on a big crew. By the time you get everybody through the lines. So we detest French hours, but maybe the French had something right. I don't know.
I'll tell you, the French catering is really good. I've been able to enjoy that in Paris a couple times. They come in little bags. They're always there. The presentation of the food is very, very good in Paris. You're always like, I think my kids used the bags that I got for catering one time. They used them in school for like a year, because they were such nice, cute little bags that were there. Anyway, next question.
Jason Fitzgerald in New York City says, what tools do you use to track tasks across a project, especially as additional people, coordinators and so forth, are sharing producer duties?
The number one tool for doing this is Excel. The number two tool is Google Docs. From my experience, it's just, it is not the right I mean, there's a lot of tools that people will sell you, and there's a lot of things, and you can build Gantt charts, and you can do all kinds of other things, and there are some producers that do that really well. But I can tell you, working in pretty big jobs, the thing that I see the most is Google Docs. I mean, the folks that don't want to use Google Docs are using Smartsheet, or they're using what's that horrible one that there's another horrible one that some people use that is
Omni? No,
not Omni. There's another online one. It's like it's Google Docs for the people who don't want to use Google Docs, that don't want something that actually works, because it's horrible. Alex?
Windows?
I mean, yeah, for show crew, for the show crew, there's a laser printer backstage that's printing out a new version of the Excel spreadsheet, and it's being printed out and then given to people. And then you say to
along with the call sheet.
Yeah, you say to the video person, "Do you want a copy for this?" If the only thing that's changed is X, and they'll go yes or no, whether they want a copy of the new version of the the current plan, and it's just an Excel sheet.
Oh, Quip is the one that I hate. I hate that app. Anyway, there's a couple of companies we work with. It's just horrible. It's just like just the bad Google Docs for people who don't want to use Google Docs. One thing that call sheets are important because it gets everybody on the same page. The other thing is that we tend not to put everybody's phone number on, because we just feel like that's not.
Oh no.
But the other thing is that you can do a lot in Google Docs for call sheets. You can have it like go get the weather and put it in. So you can do all these things with Google Docs and then what we do is we have it pre-populate. So if I just type someone's name, all the other information that needs to go in just goes in. So you just start typing their name and it fills in. Or you can, if you have it in another doc of this is the crew, it'll just grab those and put them in and print, produce the call sheet. But automating those means that you'll do more accurate work, and you'll do it more often. That's important. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just for the budget end of the market, yes, keeping the mobile phone numbers of crew private is a good thing. The other thing is making sure to use blind copy on the email addresses, so that nobody goes and scrapes all the email addresses and then puts them on spam lists.
Yeah, blind copy. It's so important. It's just you basically it's like COVID for email, because it's not that you don't want to even share those. It just means that now if that person gets hacked, all of the people that were copied, you're just spreading disease everywhere.
We've all got our contacts in our folks.
Yeah. Next question.
For God's sake, don't hit reply all and where it says, let us know if you got this contact sheet, call sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Tom Weiland in San Francisco. What do folks do when you turn down a client project because you didn't like working with them? Just tell them I'm busy. Question is, what do you tell them when they ask for a referral? I have told them to just use Real Directory.
I don't refer that many people. I refer some people carefully. But I make sure that they're really set up to be referred to. I call them and find out and see if they're interested. Like I'm pretty touchy about that, because they represent me at that point. As soon as you refer someone, they represent you to that person. So you just have to know that that's what you're doing there when you're doing that. And then with what I do, I just go, oftentimes I don't know if there's a lot of other people that do what I do, the way I do it. But I don't ever say anything other than that I'm busy. We just can't schedule more to what we're doing. Most of the time it's true. Usually for 3 or 4 months out, I'm so busy that I couldn't take anything on. So it's true, but for some clients, I'm busier than others. Kev and then Courtney.
There is an alternative approach. If you really don't like the client, charge an awful lot of money. Sometimes that might get rid, or if he accepts it, then that's your motivation, the check.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I agree. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. The quote a ridiculous price. If they say, okay, then you're stuck. But I'm fairly careful about referrals. You have to think about referrals and two purposes. One is, as Alex says, they represent you. If you refer somebody and they have a bad experience with that person, they may not hire you anymore. And the other thing is the person you're referring may take that job and you may never work again. Yep. So you have to make sure that when you're referring something that they're either normally priced higher than you, so that the client doesn't say, hey, we got this guy who did just as good a job for half the price as the other guy we're paying.
And remember that it's the client's view. It's not whether that person does a better job than you, but it's whether they view it as the same. And a lot of times your client will not be as discerning about
Right.
little things that are left out or little things. They're not conscious to it. Now it may affect their brand. It may affect the quality of their event. But they may decide that that's good enough and at half the price. And at that point, and there's definitely, we've had clients. I had a client that we were doing, $1 million a year for. We just had one where I was so busy, like literally I had 8 teams in the field, and there was just and they called me 3 weeks before, and there was like no way I could do it. Like I just couldn't. It wouldn't be fair to them, and I turned it down. Never saw them again.
Yeah,
like it was, and so that's the thing you have to, and that's the hardest part of being a freelancer and not a producer, is having to turn things down. Like as a producer, you're trying to not turn things down especially for the larger clients, just trying to say yes, and then figuring out how to build a team. And that's why team building is so important, and bidding enough that you can have coordinators and that type of thing, so that you can keep on keeping your head above it and looking through it. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just for the one-person shoot level of things, and to what we were just saying about charging higher amounts, don't be afraid to charge what you're worth. There's a race to the bottom, especially for like corporate gigs, and people don't want to pay more. But if you are bringing something valuable, something unique, make sure you charge for it and you get decent remuneration for your efforts.
Yeah, and the main thing is there are clients that'll pay for quality, and you just have to find them. A lot of it's just trying. And the mistake I've made in the past is that I didn't advertise at all or didn't promote anything because I didn't need to. There was all this work coming in, but then I realized you couldn't choose very much either. I am not advertising now because I'm too busy again. But that you don't get to choose. You don't get to meet new clients that you might want to work with. So that's something to think about as well. Next question.
Paul Wallace is in with, when a movie wins an Oscar for Best Picture, why does the producer get to take home the actual trophy?
Well, the producer is the one that put it all together. Typically, there is that 1 or 2 people that they made it happen. They're the ones that they're the ones that pick the right director and the actors, and they mix the right stew together to get that film to that point. Go ahead, Courtney. And we're gonna go speed round because we only got 5 minutes.
Okay, I think there are rules now in the Academy that you can only have 4 producers, I think, that actually take home trophies. And so out of the 15 that are listed on the movie, only the top people on the list get to take them home.
Theoretically, the ones that worked on it. Next question.
Moving on to Sky Gleason's question, client management. When something goes wrong, what is your positive statement to the client that something went wrong, but will be okay?
Number 1 is I try to be pretty transparent. If something's wrong, clients finding out that that something went horribly wrong, and not finding about it, they'll just never trust you again. So you have to be, but at the same time, you don't have to tell them every little thing that isn't going to necessarily affect the end product. You're part of what you need to do is kind of absorb a lot of that. Like you're absorbing a lot of the punishment, for them, that if you're not absorbing it, then, and there's a couple things that I don't do in client management. I do the best I can to not talk about other clients ever with clients. I might have a funny story that is positive about another client, but I'll never talk down, one client to the other. Or talk down, because what they're going to walk away with is, and you just don't want to talk down people in general, but what they're going to walk away with is that you do that to them. So anytime you're talking bad about other people, they just assume that you do that about them to the other people. So that is it's an important thing to think about when you want to gossip is how people will relate to it, in general. But I try not to talk about it at all. A lot of the shows we do are pretty NDA'd. So unless the client has told me I can talk about it, then I don't, otherwise I won't talk about it at all, or it'll show up, and so I like clients to feel like they're the only client we're working with, and not, I don't tell them I'm busy on something else or I'm working on other things. And I also don't tell them
when the switcher goes down, you say what to the client?
Well, I have 2 switchers. So I say the switcher went down, like if they see a little glitch and they come over and ask, I said, well, the first switcher went down, the backup's still running. We had to flip it over. We lost a second or 2, and you know, and the clients that I work with, I can usually, like, we get to the end, and if we go into a postmortem, I will tell them all the little things that I didn't like about our show, because there's no show that I do that I like, ever. Like, I never like my shows. Like, I hate them. You know, within a week, all I can see is everything that went wrong. So, but that's for me progress. Like, I just, you know, I'm gonna have the next show be that much better than the one that I'm working on. I've learned a bunch of things, and so if I'm not evolving, if I'm not hating my shows, I feel like I've stopped. You know, but you know, I can see all the things that are wrong. But if a client asks me, like, what would you have done to make it better, I'll tell them. You know, and not what other people should have done, but what I should have done. You know, like, I didn't like this graphic, and this little piece didn't work, because when they know that you're particular, a lot of clients like that. They want you to be more particular than they are. That's your job. It's part of your job. Next question.
Thank you.
As a producer, Larry Tang asked, do you ask your client to pay you a deposit all up front or after the show for your own fees?
Go ahead. And we're going to do real quickly, Bill, and then Kev.
We used to, in the beginning, when projects took 90 days, 120 days, it was a third on signing, a third at the end of principal photography, and a third at the end of the delivery of the thing. That collapsed to half and half. And now generally you bill the day everything gets done, because they all want it in 17 days.
Yeah. When you're working large corporate, you can't bill up front. You know, so you just have to build it into how you're doing. You're not going to get paid 45 days, you know, is really what it's going to take from the end of the show. And the companies that can absorb that get the work. You know, like, so that, you know, like, that was part of the business, is getting big enough that you can absorb not getting paid for 45 days after the end of the event. So, and that's like Fortune 10. Like, they can't turn on that dime. And if you can't handle that, you're not going to work for them. You know, you're going to work for the person who can. You know, like, that's the, you know, and so being able to, you know, figure out your cash management, that you can do that, is just how there's a lot of work you get that we get, because we absorb stuff. You know, like, we know we'll get paid. I do too. I'm running late too. I'm going to say just thank you really quickly to everybody, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning. All right. We're doing education tomorrow. Thanks. See you guys.
Do I have to give you back host before you can finish?
Yes, you do. All right.
Okay. Give me 1 second, or do you want me to finish it here?
You can close it up.
Good job, Stuart.
Okay, in that case, good night, everybody.
tomorrow.
And I'm probably not going to be here tomorrow.
Okay.
So if Mickey is, or Sky wants to grab it, enjoy the day, guys.
All right.
And nobody died.